So this video is to go over solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. We're going to do two examples which you were asked to write down prior to watching this video. So if you haven't written down our two examples, pause this video, go back a step in our Nearpod, grab a pencil, piece of paper, and write down the two examples, and then come back to this video. Okay, let's get started. So when you're using the quadratic formula, you want to be really careful when you do two things. And those two things are when substituting in A, B, and C, because if you remember the quadratic formula, it said x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared. And so there's some negative and positives throughout the entire formula that we have to be really careful with. And then because there's so many little things to simplify, we want to be really careful each time we do simplify a component. So let's get started. So our first example is 3x squared plus 2x is equal to 8. And just like when we were solving by factoring, when you solve by quadratic formula, the very first thing is to make sure it's equal to 0. What I notice here is that I'm equal to 8. So to get to 0, I have to do 8 minus 8. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. So I'm going to rewrite this as 3x squared plus 2x minus 8 equal to 0. And so that is step 1. So step 2 is to identify the A, B, and C values. So our A, B, and C. And remember, standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c. And the key thing is that you're watching for the sign. So that 3 doesn't have a sign, so I know it's an imaginary positive. B is plus 2, so that is a positive 2. And C is minus 8, so C is a negative 8. So step 3 is to plug it into the quadratic formula. But before we get started with that, one of the best things that you can do is write the formula down every single time. 1, it will help you memorize it quicker, and 2, it will help you keep track of what values go where. So I'm going to sing the quadratic formula to Pop Goes the Weasel. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So now I'm ready to fill it out. And what we notice is that we have a couple of different signs here. We have a negative b to start with. We have plus and minus. We have just b, which is squared. We have a negative for a, c, and a. And so when we're plugging it in, we need to watch out for the negative. And anywhere else in the equation, I like to put parentheses around the values as I plug them in. Okay, so here we go. X equals negative b. Our b value is 2, so the opposite sign is negative 2. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. Notice how I put parentheses and squared it. Now I'm going to put in the b value of 2. And then minus 4 times a times c. So again, setting up the parentheses, now I'm going to substitute in a of 3 and c of negative 8. All over 2a. Again, variable, parentheses, then substituted in a of 3. That is step 3. Step 4 and all the rest coming, step 5 and 6 and 7, are all about simplifying and simplifying it in pieces. So the first thing that we want to simplify is something called the radicand. And the radicand is everything that's on the inside of the square root, underneath it. So in our problem, we have underneath 2 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 8. So the radicand is just the 2 squared minus 4 times 3 minus 8. And I'm going to do this off to the side because there's a couple of steps, and then I'll just rewrite the final one. So 2 squared, 2 times 2 is 4. Then I have minus 4 times 3 times negative 8. So PEMDAS tells me to do multiplication first. So I'm going to do 4 times 3 is 12, keeping everything else. Then again, multiplication. Negative 12 times negative 8 is a positive 96. And then I have the 4. 4 plus 96 is 100. So I simplified the radicand, everything underneath the square root, to be 100. So then I'm going to rewrite everything else that I had from the equation. And I'm done with step 4. So step 5 is to simplify the numerator and denominator. And so the numerator, negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 100. The plus and minus and the negative 2 I can't simplify until I simplify that square root first. So hopefully you recognize that the square root of 100 is a perfect square, and so that is 10. So the numerator gets simplified to negative 2 plus or minus 10, and the denominator, 2 times 3, can be simplified to be 6. Step 6 is to split this into 2 separate fractions. And the reason why we can separate it or split it is because we have a plus and a minus. And that's the split. So I can say x is equal to negative 2 plus 10 over 6. Or x is equal to negative 2 minus 10 over 6. And then step 7 is to simplify each individual fraction so that we get 2 solutions. So for the left side, negative 2 plus 10 is 8. 8 divided by 6 reduces. Each one can be divided by 2. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So one of my solutions is x equals 4/3. On the other side, I have negative 2 minus 10, which is negative 12, divided by 6. Negative 12 divided by 6 is negative 2. So that is my second solution. So we solved the quadratic formula, x squared plus 2x minus 8, and got the solutions of x equals 4/3 or x equals negative 2. That is our first example. So now we're going to try our second example. So the second example you were asked to write down was 6x squared plus 4 is equal to 25. So again, I have my steps listed out. The first one is to make sure it's equal to 0, and if not, to rewrite it. So I go to the equal sign and I say it's equal to 25x. That is not what I want. So I'm going to subtract 25x from both sides, which will give me 0. And then I'm going to rewrite it 6x squared minus 25x plus 4. Then I get to identify my a, b, and c values. A is a positive 6. B is a negative 25. Don't forget to be very careful with those signs. And C is a positive 4. Then I'm going to fill out the quadratic formula. But before I do that, I'm going to write the formula down by singing it. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So now as I fill it out, I'm going to be really careful about all my signs, and I'm going to use parentheses and keep my work really clean and organized. So I have x is equal to negative b, which is just saying the opposite of the b value. My b value is negative 25, so a negative is positive. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, and our b value is negative 25, minus 4 times a times c. A is 6, c is 4, all over 2a with a, b, and 6. So then I'm going to simplify in pieces. So the first thing I'm going to simplify is that radicand, okay? And I can do that kind of off to the side. The radicand is everything underneath the square root. Negative 25 squared is negative 25 times itself, and 2 negatives is a positive. Then 25 times 25 is 625. Minus 4 times 6 times 4. So then I'm going to do multiplication. I can do it in pieces. 6 times 4 is 24. negative 4 times 24 is negative 96. So I have 625 minus 96, which is positive 529. So that is the simplified radicand. So now I'm going to rewrite it with x equals 25 plus or minus the square root of that radicand, 529, all over 2 times 6. Okay, then I'm going to simplify the numerator, that square root of 529. Use a calculator or you can break it down, but it is a perfect square. The square root of 529 is 23. So I can say the numerator is 25 plus or minus 23. And the denominator, 2 times 6, is 12. Now I'm ready to split this fraction into 2 separate problems. X equals 25 plus 23 over 12, or x equals 25 minus 23 over 12. And then I'm going to keep simplifying each side. 25 plus 23 is 48, and 48 divided by 12 is 4. So one solution is x equals 4. On the other side, 25 minus 23 is 2. 2 divided by 12 reduces to 1/6. So my other solution is x equals 1/6. Okay. Remember, we can always check our answers by substituting them into the original problem. And I'm going to do that just with the first solution, just to show you that it still works, just like we did with factoring. So I'm just going to check this first solution of x equals 4 in that original equation, 6x squared plus 4 equals 25. So I'm going to substitute in my solution that I'm checking for all of the x's. And I'm going to simplify. So 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. And then I can do the 2 multiplications. 6 times 16 is 96. And 25 times 4 is 100. 96 plus 4 is 100. And 100 does equal 100. Therefore, x equals 4 is a true solution to the original equation. Thank you for watching. This video was solving quadratics by quadratic formula, and I hope you are ready to kind of put it all together tomorrow or today for our next synchronized lesson, where we're going to practice the quadratic formula as well as solving by factoring before our mini assessment over Unit 0 next class. Bye.